Welcome back to the Weekend Warrior Show. And once again, I have a very special guest in Ms. Kristen Lopez, who's my fellow film critic and CCA member, who has an amazing list of accomplishments that I'll try to get through. Right now, she's running the Film Maven, a great website she runs where she has reviews, she has interviews, she has essays. Used to be a film critic for The Wrap, and a film critic, freelance critic writing for IndieWire, Fansided, Culturist, and Citizen Dame. I don't know if I knew her back then, but on top of that, she's also a published author. She has two books out so far, or more. Three books out so far, and she has, including one called "But Have You Read the Book?" of this, which is a second edition coming out in on July 8th, the romance edition.
28th.
What?
28th. July
July 28th.
28th.
July 28th. Yeah, yeah, and it's called the romance edition. She'll talk about that a little more. She also recently wrote a book called Popcorn Disabilities, which I want to talk about because she has a very special, I don't know what to call it, a niche in the film criticism world, but she does have a very good, she's a very good advocate for disability representation in films, film criticism, and also she's been on Turner Classic Movies. So she's kind of, I don't know if you consider yourself a historian. Do you consider yourself a movie historian or?
Think so. I don't know. I've never really figured out like how that gets determined or who determines that. Maybe it's just like a self, it's like calling yourself an entrepreneur. Like if you call yourself that, then you are that. So yeah, I mean, I think people have reached out enough to me about my expertise, that I think I am. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
you
gonna
wrote a
own
lot.
it.
Yeah, you wrote a lot of essays, and you've been appeared on panels about reclaiming disability and representation in Hollywood. And really, I mean, I consider you like an expert. Like I feel like
Thank you.
I feel like if I had a question about how to write about disability in movies, I'd probably check with you first. And it's funny because I think the first time we've had any kind of interaction was when you were asking about whether or not Sundance or Toronto could actually
Yeah.
have. I'm not sure how. It must have been before COVID, but I think it was
It's a
just about.
lot. Yeah, it was well before COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were wondering about how whether or not you could someone in a wheelchair can actually do it. And I was like, you know what? I don't know because I mean I've had I don't know if you know I had cancer maybe 13 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's when I think that's what you were going through. You were
Yeah,
just
okay.
out of it, and yeah, that's where we kind of started with the dynamic.
Yeah, because I remember like after I got back, I was still like really not having fun, like doing like South by Southwest was impossible. It was, I mean, I did it and I went to Berlin, but it was just like yeah, it was really tough. But then we met in person for the first time at last year at Wake Up Dead Man in
Yeah.
L.A. And I got to meet you in person and see how delightful you are. And your writing is great, but like I mean, meeting people in person is a very different story. So Kristen, it's a real honor to have you on the Weekend Warrior Show. Thanks for doing this. Uh, and I'll,
Thank
I'll
you.
and I'll start with a really simple question: like, how did you become a film critic? What was the kind of the journey to become a film critic?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's one of those where I just kind of started, and then it became something that, I always tell people it's something I thought I would do until I got a real job. It was never something I figured I would do with any sort of authority or longevity or getting paid for it. I started out of high school. Somebody at my senior prom told me that they had seen an ad on Craigslist back when that was a thing you did, for a site that was looking for movie reviewers. I got a whopping $15 a review. I think I got one raise at the entire time I was there. I think of like a couple of bucks. And in between that, I had also done a couple of things. Weirdly enough, I don't know if you remember this, but I had started writing for a couple of sites that I had loved that I read, and one of them, I want to say you let me do it a couple of times. I had reached out to you when you were at Coming Soon
Oh,
and you were
okay.
doing Weekend Warrior there, and I wrote a couple of little tidbits or something. And so that was kind of like the thing that I would do, is just kind of like hit up some of the sites that I read regularly and was like, is that a thing that I can just like write some nerd stuff? And people
Hmm.
were like, yeah. And then eventually, I started writing for other sites that didn't want to pay me. And eventually I started freelancing, and actually, getting bylines, but I never gave up film criticism. So in that, that's still something I do, where it's I do reviews, but then I'm also writing actual essays and investigative pieces and stuff like that for other places. So, but it was always a thing where I was like, I'll do this until I get a real job, until
Hmm.
I get a staff position, or until I find something else to do. And all this time later, I'm well out of high school now. It's just it's what I do now. So I guess it is the real job finally that I've been I mean I've worked at trades, I was the
The
TV
rap.
editor at IndieWire. I was the
Hmm.
film editor for The Wrap. But I've been a freelance writer and critic for, I think, far longer than I've actually had staff positions
Hmm.
at this point. And it
Yeah.
works for me.
Yeah. That was like coming soon a long time, like almost 13 years. And
Yeah.
I think leaving there was, I don't know, it was a decision. So
It was
uh
a different time. I think
yeah.
people don't really remember unless you lived through it. Now there's a whole generation that doesn't understand kind of the early days of
Oh no.
film stuff being on the internet and how insular that community was. I mean, and no disrespect to your gender, it was mostly men.
Oh no,
Women were around.
no, no, no,
Women were
yeah.
there, but it definitely felt more like a boys' club. But for me, as a young girl living in Sacramento, away from nothing was ever happening there, I felt very kind of cool because I read the coming soons and the ain't it cools and I kind of knew all this stuff. And I now that's all gone. Nobody
Oh
really
yeah.
cares in the same way anymore. And so it's definitely one of those where I'm like, I came at a really cool, like interesting time when the internet and film were just this very different animal.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. I've been doing it for 25 years, and I kind of came in at a point where, like where like the print critics were getting mad at all the reviews running on the internet before they can print
Yeah.
their reviews, and that's how it led to review embargoes and the mess we're in now. We'll talk about it a little later. But you also, I didn't mention, but you're actually a staunch advocate for women filmmakers. You've written a lot about that.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about that a little more about a movie that just came out. We'll talk about that more. But um, you consider yourself an enthusiast of older films. I feel like you're also kind of an expert on that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love old movies. I maintain that I don't think anybody should be in the industry that we're in if you don't know the past in some way. You don't know where we're going until you've seen where we've been. And I love classic film. I'm a big nerd for it. I'm always heartened that TCM kind of considers me part of their group, which is very cool. Because yeah, I mean, I started writing about old films because I was writing about contemporary films so much. I was like, this is a nice little break from what I'm doing on the daily. And again, I came at a time before, the You Must Remember This and all these kind of now the classic film world has gone very all in on influencerdom in its own way. And so I decided to start a podcast called Ticklish Business that's been going on for 10 years now. I that started as an offshoot of a blog I was doing back when blogs were popular. So yeah, I definitely kind of champion having an awareness, especially if you want to be a film critic or in the film industry of like, you don't have to be an expert by any stretch, but understand that we don't get Jacob Elordi if you don't know Tom Cruise and you don't know Marlon Brando and you don't know all these kind of precursors. You don't get Disclosure Day without, Sugarland Express, without, Greatest Show on Earth, or you kind of there's always a through line. So I'm always kind of the old man shaking the fist at the cloud, being like, you should know these things, you should want to. So I love when like Ryan Coogler or Tarantino or whomever is kind of talking about their influences and their pre 1990, because I hope it inspires more people to like nerd out with me about old movies and all of that.
Yeah, no, I kind of came in late. I started reviewing movies when I was like in my 30s already. So I was doing other things, and I watched movies in the 70s. I'm older, definitely older than you, and I watched movies in the 70s and watched movies in the 80s. I didn't watch any movies in the 90s. That was kind of a period where I was just dealing with music, so I didn't watch any movies. But it was really interesting kind of coming into this, and then all of a sudden you talk to other people, and they go like, "Oh, have you seen this? No. Have you seen it? No." I mean, to be honest, I'm seeing Malcolm X for the first time next week. And
But you're seeing it.
yeah,
That's,
I'm
I
seeing it.
mean,
No, no.
that's the thing. That's the thing is I know that people were kind of going on about that Sarah Pigeon interview that came out a couple weeks ago, where she admitted that she didn't know who Jimmy Stewart was.
Oh wow,
And,
yeah, that's not good.
rightfully or wrongly, I'm kind of like, I'm hoping that this inspires her to maybe watch a Jimmy Stewart movie. But I know a lot of young critics or, young people that want to be critics, and, they're just kind of like, well, where do I start? And I'm like, it's not about watching the current movies of today. You need to be watching the movies of the past. And more than that, you need to be reading about, the past, the studio system and where we are now. I love the Inside Hollywood book world.
Hmm.
Some of my favorite books are some of the weird like inside studio tomes that came out in the 1990s into the 2000s, because they really do give you an eye at what is now so fundamentally altered about the film world that we're in.
Hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. And I've been very lucky because I have a repertory theater literally a block from me, and I am there every weekend seeing stuff. And I don't see as many 40s, 50s. I do see if something looks interesting, I'll check it out. So I'll see like and I have a membership, so it's not that expensive. I can make whatever. But and at what point did you actually like say, hey, you know what? I could be a voice for people with disabilities, either in film or in film criticism. When did that happen in this journey?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been disabled since I was born. I've been a wheelchair user for as long as I can remember. So it's always been something that has been an identifier in my life. And when I started writing professionally, I was just like, I'm not gonna write about disability. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about, my disability, and that doesn't define me. I want to be known for something other than being disabled. So I really pushed against writing about it. And for a lot, I mean, there's still people today, weirdly enough, when they, trolls on the internet, when they come for me online, they don't know I'm disabled, and then they find out later. And I'm like, well, at least you didn't immediately attack me for being disabled. Like, you just came at me for being a woman. Like, that seems like, fair and balanced. I'll take it. But eventually, as I was trying to kind of conjure up pitches and things that would kind of separate me from everybody else that was going to be pitching something, I was like, well, nobody's going to write about disability, so if anything, I can make money that way, pitching, how this plays from a disabled angle. And so it was kind of a financial, purely mercenary move. But I realized very quickly that it would always get a response. They're either very positive or very negative, usually a mix of both. So, like, The Rock retweeted something I wrote once because I talked about how Skyscraper I thought was actually a unique use of disability. Got a lot of traction on that. I talked about how Ant-Man and the Wasp totally was not authentic to chronic pain, and that got picked up by, I think, the Drudge Report, and I spent a very awful weekend on Twitter having people like threaten my life because I dared to say so I've gotten like the gamut of response, but people identified with it. There was an audience that was really interested in hearing somebody who was disabled. Either disabled people who loved movies were like, I feel seen, someone gets it, or there were able people that were like, I don't understand this experience, but I like the way you write about it, and I think that's really interesting. So it's become now, kind of something where I'm like, well, nobody else is doing it. And as much as I would love there to be more disabled journalists in the industry, there isn't right now. Odds are there's not going to be, because especially now there's no incentive to hire. So I'm like, it's now kind of my like duty, at least I kind of take it on as a responsibility. Like, I got to do it because no one else is going to do it.
Hmm. Well, it's one of those things that you don't know. I don't think anyone would know unless you said so. I mean, you can if you're a good writer, you can write. I mean, I guess that one thing is, I wonder if you have. Are you able to get to like press screenings and all that stuff in LA? Is it pretty easy
Yeah,
to?
yeah. I mean, the press screenings here are the screening rooms for the most part are accessible. It's usually about where to put my wheelchair. It's always funny to go to a screening room and see that they don't have a space carved out for a wheelchair,
Hmm.
because the implication is that no one's going to use that space anyway. So there's that. But, I think the biggest challenge every year is award season.
Right.
And I've written about this before. You can read the article over at IndieWire. I've FYC season rolls along, and it's usually kind of a series of emails that I send to everybody having to disclose my disability because every year, like clockwork, there's one house in LA that is a private residence that gets rented out every year for FYC season. And I always get emails, do you want to come? And the first year I got invited, I was like, well, cool, I'd love to come. How do we do this? Because I use a wheelchair. And they're like, well, the house is a private residence and it's not modified for the disabled. I'm like, cool. So what's your plan?
All right.
Because, like, I want to go. So, like, you invited me. How do I go? And the first year I got told, well, we have security guards that are really burly men. So they can just lift you in the wheelchair up the stairs. And I'm like, no, we're not going to do
Okay.
that. That's a liability issue for them. It's a liability issue for me.
Hmm.
Maybe next year you can just pick a different residence, or maybe not use
Sure.
that space because you don't know everybody's ability. It's not just me. Maybe there's old people or there's, people that just
Oh
can't
yeah.
do stairs. But every year, like clockwork, every year I get an email saying it's gonna be at this place, and I email every year, is it accessible yet? Or did you figure out a way for me to get there,
Hmm.
that doesn't involve potentially, a lawsuit? At this point, at least, 8 years late down the road, I usually don't get an answer. They just won't answer me, or
Oh
I'll get a convenient it's full. So it's always funny to me. It's always funny because you have to really navigate those discussions. I have to be the one that's kind of transparent and be like, "Well, I'm disabled," and then the rep is usually in a really crappy spot, being like, "Well, I'm sorry, but it's not accessible.
hmm.
Looks like you can't go." And I'm like, "Yeah, that sucks, but like maybe next year do better."
Oh yeah.
And next year, no one ever does better. So I've kind of, I just kind of keep being that squeaky wheel.
Yeah. Do you drive also? Do you drive yourself?
I do drive.
Oh.
I do have a license. I don't drive in LA.
Oh,
LA
okay.
drivers are bananas. I do, and I don't understand the whole unprotected left turn thing here. It's Sacramento drivers, very, very quiet. Everybody uses a blinker. It's a very calm. I love driving in Sacramento. Will not drive here, but I can drive.
Oh, okay. So are you California? All that's born native?
Oh
Okay.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Wow.
Had a brief kind of 2, 3 year stint where I lived in Arizona as a kid, but no, always all California all the time.
Right. So what got you writing your first? Which was your first book? Was it there was a which was
It
it?
was, but have you read the book?
That
So
was your first
it
book.
came,
Okay. All right.
yeah, TCM commissioned me to write that in 2022, and it came out in 2023.
That was recently. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it was great. I mean, if there's any silver lining to a pandemic, it's that you get a lot more accomplished because you don't have anything else going on. So, I read 40 books, watched 40 movies in about a 6 month period, and worked a full day job and wrote the book, and it was a very awesome first experience.
Yeah. I'm always impressed with my fellow film critics who actually read the book beforehand. I wish I had the time to do that. I mean even Dune, which I read like ages ago, I was like, oh, I'm gonna read Dune before the first movie, and then it was like, okay, I'm gonna read the Dune before the second movie, and now don't even know where my copy of Dune is. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was beneficial. I don't do that for everything, especially now, contemporary, there's so much content. But it was great to kind of to go through either stuff I'd never read, stuff I'd read a long time ago. Stuff rereading Jurassic Park is always really fun. And also getting to watch movies that I'd never seen. So like I'd never seen Doctor No. So getting to watch that for the first time and read the book for the
oh wow.
first time was really fun.
Yeah, I actually Bond. When it comes to Bond, I actually read most of the books because maybe because I was too young to see the movies at one point, and then I finally got to see them, and I have copies of them like way buried somewhere in my house of clutter. But I've some original ones, but I do you know Kara Warner by any chance?
I do, yes.
Oh, okay, because she always impressed me because she was like she knew about Game of Thrones before anyone else. She knew about Twilight before anyone else, and she was like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be amazing project." It's like, "Oh, okay, sure, Kara," and she was always right. So, um, anyway, so okay, so basically, you have a romance edition of Have You Read the Book coming out July 28th, as you said. Uh, what is it a mix of books, movies from over the decades, or
Yeah, yeah. So it's from 1920. So The Sheik is the earliest one. It includes Twilight, includes, pretty much the gamut. So from the 1920s into the present day. And it was, wasn't my choice of subject. I don't think I would have necessarily picked romance. But it was a fun one to do because I didn't realize how romance changes both in narrative and in literature. What is now considered inappropriate was, in the 1920s commonplace. So
Mm.
rough wooing, and, non-consensual sex and stuff like that, that now we kind of would be like, what is going on? Gone with the Wind is still celebrated for its, questionable Rhett Butler, Scarlett O'Hara
Oh.
love scene. And it was also interesting to see how things, especially in the 90s, so Bridget Jones, now considered one of the quintessential, early 2000s rom-coms, and the book is very different, and it's also very 90s in how it promotes kind of thinspo and women women's vanity and all of that. So it was not my choice, but I think getting to experience all of it made the writing, I think, a lot funner because there were actual things to kind of dive into.
Mm. Which version of Wuthering Heights, movie-wise, do you have, if you have it
So
at all?
Wuthering Heights is in the first book, and I
Okay.
picked the 39.
Okay.
And I love the 39 one. It's the OG, of course. And it was before Emerald Fennell had announced hers, so I
Okay.
I didn't get to mention that it was happening. But I love the Merle Oberon Laurence Olivier one. Yes, I know it's only like the first like 23 chapters of the book. But it's a one of the few times I would say that the adaptation and the source material are good for different reasons.
Great. I should also mention Popcorn Disabilities, which came out last year, which is also a subject which was that just what something you decided to do on your own, or did you have someone who asked you to do it, or
Yeah, so I mean my agent was very much like, you should write another book. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was kind of like, at that point I had a different day job, so I knew I couldn't really do a ton of work. And at the same time I was like, what can I do, like the back of my hand? And I was like, at this point, if I can do, disability, great. All of my stuff will be uh in one place. All my terms, all my writing can be in one place, and I can, have something to show for it. And it was definitely a tough sell. Disability is not exactly a fun, thrilling, sexy topic. But it was nice to finally kind of put all of the thoughts and all of the kind of academia that I had crafted and that others had crafted to tell a story that was not an academic book. Unfortunately, it was put into an academic press late in the game, which I wasn't pleased with.
oh, okay.
But, I like to think that it's doing something different and tells a fun, kind of a fun look at a topic that unfortunately is still very much mired in stereotype.
Wow, yeah. Did you include some of the stuff you written before for like IndieWire and stuff, or no, yet it was all
Yeah,
original?
I did borrow a lot from stuff that I'd already kind of published at IndieWire, so that's all cited in the book. But a lot of it was original, original things that I had never talked about before.
Go ahead. Well, I'm gonna include a lot of links in the story, like in the print portion of this show. So there'll be a lot of things people can read from you about you and from you.
Yay.
So you can do. So let's we got to talk. We're both film critics. We got to talk about some stuff which has been very much on our minds, very much in the conversation. I provided a couple quotes for something you wrote a few weeks ago, and that's the kind of the social media influencers versus film critics versus studio embargoes versus. I mean, it's really kind of crazy. It's kind of like in the last couple of weeks we had Disclosure Day, which had all sorts of crazy uh positive gushing responses weeks before. It was really interesting because we had Disclosure Day and then we had Supergirl, and they both did the exact same thing where basically someone reported tracking was not good for both of them. And as soon as the tracking came out, all these gushing quotes came out from some people we know, some people don't. But then there was also these weird like Supergirl had all these randos kind of just going, "Oh my God, it's got to have Supergirl. It's a great movie." Who is that? I don't know. I have no idea. Versus just showing it to critics and letting us, you know. So maybe we can use some of the rest of our time just talking about that problem and why it's a problem, and if it's getting better with the whole with Odyssey or not. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of I get asked a lot, kind of like who's responsible for where we are with this whole thing, and it's a multi-pronged problem, right? We started talking about the early days of entertainment journalism and criticism on the internet, and I think that's part of where it starts. It starts with this group of people that, really do start to have a voice, in the virality of the internet, things can go farther, wider. You look at, like you had mentioned, the power that someone like Harry Knowles and Ain't It Cool had in terms of kind of being able to go to test screenings. These weren't even finished films, and kind of talk about a movie and in some instances alter the complete course of how that film would go because the review would be so negative of this movie in its testing phase. There was power there. You also had, Comic-Con and stuff like that. So there were a lot of opinions, and that idea of these aren't film critics, right? These are just dudes, and they were mostly dudes. They were mostly dudes that had opinions. They're just like you. So there's that allure of authenticity that starts. And then once the internet takes hold and everybody starts pivoting from physical newspapers to the internet, the question of who pays for that becomes a thing, and there it was mostly ad based. Clicks start to come into to play, and this belief that if it's on the internet, you shouldn't have to pay for it. We shouldn't have to pay for news, shouldn't have to pay for
Hmm.
all of this. Which, when ad buying was a thing, there was a lot of money in ads, kept people paid. And now, the worm is kind of turned, and ad dollars are not what they used to be. The algorithm is keeping people off of certain sites, or social media is keeping people off of sites, and the rise of the influencers. So, social media becomes omnipresent, and this idea of authenticity in marketing, which is what an influencer is. I don't, I know many an influencer who is a very, these are very nice people, but they need to admit that they are marketers. They
Hmm.
are not critics, they are not journalists, they are marketing.
Hmm.
But that Harry Knowles kind of landscape just pivots to influencers for everything. Now you have influencers for theme parks, you have
Oh
influencers for
yeah,
films, you have
for sure.
influencers for pets, all these different things. And all of them are selling a very specific brand of authentic consumerism.
Yeah.
So if you like them, then you will buy what they like. And with film, it's kind of just become really ridiculous in
Yeah.
how much money I'm assuming exchanges hands, and not just
Sure.
money in terms of actual dollars, but in incentives. So
Oh yeah.
you and I both see a lot of
Oh yeah.
influencers that get flown out to
Premieres.
events.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they get invited to events. They go to red carpets. They get all sorts of special things that all cost money. And so this is a multi-pronged thing. Studios believe they're getting something back on this investment, and it's slowly telling, actual journalists, actual critics, like, if you don't start cultivating an authentic brand on video, you are not going to be getting the same things.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, that's what's really interesting. You mentioned the Inco News because I feel it's kind of come around. Like it's been like Inco News is 30 years ago now,
Yeah.
and I feel it's come around now where it's basically just these bros on YouTube who are just like, oh, I'm just like you know, blah blah blah, and a few people we know, of course. But one of the interesting things that I could think is what's going on right now is there's this narrative being created around movies early before people even get a chance to see them. So there was a narrative for Disclosure Day. There's a narrative for Supergirl. Even Jackass, there was a narrative. There was a clip show. People saw it for the first time on Wednesday night, and by Friday, everyone was like, "Oh, it's just a clip show. I don't need to see it." It's really kind of creating a narrative that really hurts movies or helps them. Like for something like Obsession, is the narrative has helped the
Yeah.
movie.
It was interesting when I was writing about Wuthering Heights, which, there's allegations that, Warner Brothers paid like, over 2,000 different influencers to come and support that movie. And when I started to see comments from people, from influencers, the reviews were very much like, I'm being honest. This is my honest opinion. And I felt that was interesting because clearly the influencers are starting to realize that people are not buying it.
Mm,
And I think you see that a lot in comments where people are like, how much are you getting paid? What are you getting for this? Clearly influencer marketing is starting to erode because it's so saturated. Everybody is now trying to be an influencer or is an influencer,
mm,
and influencers are like movie stars. If you weren't there at the beginning and you're not the top like 2%, you're not getting in. It's not happening. And I think that, what I've been doing is kind of doing I'm terrible at consistency, but I keep trying, doing TikTok reviews and kind of selling it as I'm not an influencer, but I'm an actual film critic who just wants to help you spend your money right. And I noticed that people appreciate that because I'm kind of telling them like off the bat, like, if you agree, great. If you don't, whatever. But at least I'm going to be honest. I'm not kind of a
totally.
corporate shill
Oh yeah.
telling you what, corporate daddy wants me to tell you.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing about being a film critic. You have to be honest, and if you have
Yeah.
to be honest, like I mean, I loved Wuthering Heights. I wish someone paid me to say that I loved it, but I did love it.
Yep.
And I admitted that like I had not seen any other version of Wuthering Heights. I haven't seen the 939. I haven't seen any other version. That was my first version of Wuthering Heights, and I loved it. I'll probably will read the book eventually. I haven't read the book either. So, but
I think it really does. I think influencer marketing really does undo a lot of good because there are critics, that want to support these movies, that want to do the work,
mm,
and they're limited in their access. Great example, I love Olivia Wilde's The Invite. I think it's one of my favorites.
it's great.
Would
Yeah,
have loved to have gotten any invitation to do some sort of press for it.
sure.
Because I already appreciate the movie, and yet they kind of cultivate the biggest names right now. And the big problem is that entertainment journalism is getting smaller. There are more people now that are laid off or not working at a trade
Sure.
than there were at the time. So I'll still get reps that'll email me and be like, "Hey, we would love for you to see this movie and write something." And I'm like, "Cool, it's freelancing right now for a new release. It's not something I can just pitch today and get
Oh
get
yeah,
money tomorrow." I'm
exactly.
like, so I would love to support it on my newsletter, and I give them all the info, and they're like, yeah, we were kind of hoping you could like pitch it to Variety or a big
Oh sure,
or
right.
we
Yeah.
thought you were still working at the Wrap, and I'm like,
Oh yeah.
nope, nope, I'm not. But I'm offering you an authentic, like actual, like determined opinion, and I do have a following that will go and support the movie, and they're still very reluctant, I think,
Yeah.
to kind of court the independent journalists. And right now, there's more independent than there are actually
Oh, true.
staff,
It's absolutely
you
true.
know?
Yeah, and what sucks for me like these days, like now also I'm getting invited to. I might have told you this. I get invited to screenings the night before the embargo breaks. So I'm like,
Yeah.
the disclosure day. I was trying to film a video and I did some writing and filmed it 10:30 at night. 10:30 at night. I was writing my review for 9 a.m. Embargo, and I was like, this is not this. Just give us a couple days to watch it. Think about it.
Yeah.
It's not very
Yeah.
often. We have we have about 4 minutes, almost 5 minutes left, so we're gonna try to wrap things up. But I want a quick question. Do you think Supergirl would have been a better movie if there was a woman director?
I always think we need more women directing, especially movies about women. So, I would love to say that maybe it would be better. I think my biggest issue is the script, and the script is written by a woman.
Mm,
So, it's not necessarily I don't think it's necessarily Craig Gillespie's fault. I think if anything, Supergirl's biggest failing is that it's trying to do the same thing that Superman did. And I think that we still don't really know under the James Gunn universe how he works with female characters.
Mm.
And if this is kind of what it is, then I'm a little, leery about it. I know people didn't like Wonder Woman 1984, fair enough, but the first Wonder Woman,
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
right.
I genuinely love that movie. So yeah, it's definitely one of those where I think the corporate structure is the problem, not necessarily the directing.
Yeah. There's also like this narrative that was created is kind of, I mean, Owen Gleiberman, one of my favorite critics, but I mean, he started this thing that was like, oh, this is the worst script ever written, and that just started. These things just started like snowballing.
I think the
Always, it's like,
hyperbole is the problem with a lot of critics these days because they're trying to be like influencers.
mm,
Influencers speak in hyperbolic terms.
yeah,
Best, worst, masterpiece, disaster, like there's no nuance, So when I use those terms in a review, they mean something, and I think that it's definitely one of those situations where the desire to be hyperbolic and chase clicks, especially at a trade, I think is the bigger issue is the bigger issue that creates
sure,
just some ugly precedents.
yeah. No, I fully agree. Anyway, that sounds like a good time, a good place to end this. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and
Anytime,
I,
anytime.
looking forward to reading some of these other books and actually reading the actual books, which I don't know when I'll have time for that. I don't know. I don't know what happens to my time, but like trying to like do a weekly video column is I don't know. I might
It's
go back to
tough.
just yeah, I might just go back to doing writing because I feel like I have to do writing anyway, so it's like I'll just write it and
Yeah.
whatever edit it, but instead of having to do like editing and everything, but yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, I mean, again, like I feel like you are an expert on so many different
Oh,
things
thank you.
that it's like just great to have you on here, and we didn't even get into the fact that I think from your last name you're Latina also, which is a whole other thing. So you have a triple threat.
I know.
Yeah. But yeah, it's great talking to you, and hopefully we run into each other again. I have no idea when I'll be back in
Yeah.
LA again, but
You'll keep me posted. Let me
yeah,
know. So,
I only go to LA when someone flies me there, so it's like
no judgment. Fair enough.
yeah.
So,
So
yeah. But
those
no,
were yeah.
anytime. It was great to come back full circle. Started with Weekend Warrior back in the day and now getting to do this. So it's a nice full circle moment.
Well, that was a lot of fun having that convo with Kristen, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Before we get to the new movies, I'll do a quick box office recap for the past weekend. For those who haven't read the numbers on hundreds of outlets that reported on Sunday morning. Sorry, I like waiting for the actuals on Monday, so that's when I'm recording this. As expected, Disney Pixar's Toy Story 5 was still number one with 70.8 million, down 56%. It is so close to reaching 300 million domestic after just 10 days. It's at 298 million so far. So probably by Monday, it'll be at 300. And then it's going to start working its way to 400. But it has some competition coming up, which I'll talk about in the next section. The big box office news this weekend was that Warner Brothers and DC Entertainment's Supergirl really bombed pretty badly. I thought it was going to get like at least 50 million, maybe on the low end of that. But it only made 37.1 million, and that's less than Morbius. It's less than the Marvels. It's not great, especially when you consider that the movie cost 180 million to make, and then maybe another 100 million marketing on top of that. So it's a definitely going to be a loss for DC and for Warner Brothers, which is already facing a buyout from Paramount. So things aren't looking good there. I mean, this is the second movie in James Gunn's DC universe after last year's Superman, which was a huge hit. People didn't like it. I mean, the reviews were mixed at best. I mean, they were not terrible. Rotten Tomatoes score was at 57% from critics, which I consider mixed. And he did get better reviews from audiences with a 75% popcorn meter. The cinema score tells a different story, with Supergirl getting a B minus, which is worse than the B received by the Marvels, but it is better than Morbius and Madam Web. They both got C plus. As far as the DCU movies, The Rock's Black Adam got a B plus, while The Flash got a B. So that's a little worrying for Supergirl having any kind of legs because it got a lower cinema score than Black Adam and The Flash. Like, got mixed reviews. I feel like Supergirl had a negative narrative going for it even before anyone even saw the movie. I mean, reviews start coming out on Monday, and by Wednesday and Thursday, everyone was like, "Oh no, I hear the movie's bad. Oh no, and blah blah blah." There was definitely some piling on going on. It was piling on going on as far as reviews about how the box office was reported. It really was not very fair. I feel like there were a few critics who were very fair about it. It's not a great movie. But I think it's a good movie. It's just okay. And some people made it sound like it was the worst movie ever made. Mostly guys, mostly fanboy guys, and it It was a real shame because I think Lily Alcock was really good. I liked Lobo. I liked the other actors playing Ruthie. I mean, it's a good story. The story was from the comics, and so for whatever happened, whatever reason, people didn't want to see it. It bombed. It's probably going to drop massively next weekend, even though it's 4th of July, and then it's going to be gone, and it'll be on HBO Max probably. I don't know, August or earlier. Who knows? So yeah, Supergirl number two, 37.1 million. Obsession remained in third place with 9.7 million. It has grossed 233.8 million so far. I mean, it had a 28% drop this weekend, which is still, I mean, come on, this is like this. It's seventh or eighth weekend now, and it's just still holding up. It's in almost 3,000 theaters. There's actually not that many movies in 3,000 theaters right now. I mean, Toy Story 5 is in over 4,000. Supergirl's in over 3,000. And Disclosure Day is in over 3,000. And that's it. Everything else is in under 3,000 theaters, which is a little odd, but it's also, I mean, when you have Toy Story 5 dominating, you're going to have Monsters and Minions coming up. All the theaters this coming weekend are going to be those movies pretty much. But anyway, so number three was Obsession, down 28%. Number four, Jackass, Best and Last. Now this is a really shocking one. Jackass series has been pretty consistent. The lowest one was probably like 20, 21 million. And that's probably the first movie. The last one, Jackass Forever, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that made over 20 million also. So this one, it was kind of, again, it had a really weird narrative. I mean, Paramount waited till the last minute to screen for critics, and we're start getting around that it's like just a clip show. They're just showing clips from the other movies and the TV show, and that was the narrative for Jackass Best and Last, even if it might not be true or not. And that's just what's going on right now. And so it bombed 8.5 million in 2,855 theaters. Less than 3,000 per theater. It took fourth place. I mean, I don't know if it's gonna, stick around for much longer. I mean, it had great reviews from critics and audiences seemed to like it. I mean, it's on Rotten Tomatoes. It got an A-minus cinema score, which is the best the franchise has received since the very first movie. With most of the installments getting like either B plus or B. But again, there was this narrative. It's a clip show. People just decide they can wait for Paramount Plus, I guess, and it opened with under 10 million. Crazy. I mean, I think I predicted 15, 60 million, and it's 8.5 million is not good. I mean, it probably didn't cost very much to make, at least. So there's that, I guess. But the number five was Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day with 8.2 million, down 53%. It has made 94.5 million so far. It is closer and closer to 100 million. It'll definitely pass that amount domestically. So it's not a complete bomb. It's doing okay. I mean, it cost less than Supergirl, so there's that, I guess. But then there was A24's Backrooms, which dropped 40% to 4.3 million. Sixth place with 184.2 million so far. Now, that is A24's biggest grossing movie so far by almost double. It is actually doubled what Marty Supreme made last year. And that was A24's biggest movie when it came out. So this is a massive for A24. They're already talking about doing a 4th of July release with 15 more minutes of footage. I don't know what's behind the scenes. I don't know. I didn't really care for the movie. I'm not going to go see it again for 50 minutes of footage. But anyway, after 5 weeks, 184.2 million. So nothing to shake a stick at. Number seven was Scary Movie with 3.1 million, down 52%. It has made 103.6 million so far. So it's cost $100 million. So that's good, I guess. So we'll see if that warrants Paramount to make another movie after this. Would that be Scary Movie 2 or Scary Movie 7? I have no idea. And in Masters of the Universe, which opened the exact same weekend, also its fourth weekend, it dropped 63% to 2.3 million. It has grossed 62 million so far. It is considered also a bomb. I mean, when you look at that, when you look at Scary Movie, 103.6 million, Masters of the Universe, 62 million, and Masters of the Universe probably cost a lot more money to make. So that's not good. Ninth place was an anime movie that I really didn't know about. I think it was released by Fathom Events, I think. It's called Bleach, Thousand Year Blood War, The Calamity. It made almost 2 million over the weekend. It made another million on Thursday. It made it to the top 10. So it's obviously people love this anime and went out to see it. After that was Old Friends, Star Wars, The Mandalorian Grogu in 10th place, down 58% with 1.8 million. It has made 175.4 million so far. So it's not that far behind Backrooms. People are saying that it's just a complete disaster and a tragedy and whatever. It's not really that bad. Leviticus dropped to 11th place, down 61%. Michael is out of the top 10 for the first time, but it's made 370.2 million so far. Right now, that's the second biggest movie of the year so far after Super Mario Galaxy. So I know it's a big hit for Lionsgate. They have a lot of money in their coffers now for other things. We'll see how it goes. 13th place was Rod Davis Lurie's Lucky Strike the World War II movie starring Scott Eastwood. That didn't do well. It got a kind of a moderate release into 772 theaters. It made only 803,000, which is about a little over 1,000 per theater. Again, if a movie makes over 1,000, I'd say it's okay, but it's not great. I mean, at least it got into the top 13, I guess. Lucky 13. I don't know. That's really it of the returning movies, I'd say. I mean, The Death of Robin Hood dropped 79%, so A24 has a huge hit with Backrooms, huge flop with Death of Robin Hood. But after that, another A24 movie, The Invite. That was Olivia Wilde's comedy with Seth Rogen, with Edward Norton, with Penelope Cruz. The four-handed comedy. There's a remake of a Spanish film. That opened in 7 theaters in New York, LA, and it made 379.1 thousand, which is 54.2 thousand per theater. That is great. That is really good showing. That's the kind of showing that we usually get for like, a P.T. Anderson movie or Wes Anderson movie when they platform. A24 plans to release it wide on July 10th. We'll see if that's a smart move. I mean, they could have done it this coming weekend. It probably would have been good counter program to the other two movies, but they're going with July 10th. We'll see what happens in the weekend between. We'll see if there's a little bit of like a slower expansion next weekend until it goes wide on July 10th. But so far, I don't know. We'll have to see. They're very cagey about releasing their theater counts beforehand. Angelina Jolie starred in the drama Couture, which opened in 235 theaters. It made 135.3 thousand, about 576 per theater. It's not great. I mean, it probably went a little wider than it needed to be. I mean, Angelina Jolie is obviously a big name star, but I don't know if that many people knew about this movie. It was released by Vertical. So, Vertical released another movie which didn't even report, or at least not yet. We'll see what happens. And that was The Get Out with Russell Crowe. It might not report. It might just be a VOD movie that got like some kind of release this weekend. I have no idea. I also mentioned that Romeria, which is Carlos Simon's movie, the Spanish coming of age film, opened in 2 theaters, made 15.2 thousand, averaging 7,597. Again, it's not great. It's okay. It's a very, very low key movie, but it's a really good movie, and hopefully people will find and tell friends about it. Let's go back over the top 10. Number 1 was Toy Story 5. Number 2, Supergirl. Number 3, Obsession. Number 4, Jackass, Best and Last. Number 5, Disclosure Day. Number 6, Backrooms. Number 7, Scary Movie. Number 8, Master of the Universe. Number 9, Bleach, Thousand Year Blood War. And number 10, Star Wars The Mandalorian and Grogu. According to my calculations, the top 10 made 147.7 million, which is pretty good. I mean, any weekend which makes over 100 million, I think say is pretty good. I mean, I think if Supergirl did better, this weekend would have done better. If Jackass did better, it is what it is. You know what I mean? This coming weekend, we have another big family movie that's going to try to make some kind of play against Toy Story 5. We'll see how it goes, and we'll find out when I talk about the new movies, which is right after this. Just 2 weeks after Pixar Animation returned with its massive hit, Toy Story 5, Illumination Entertainment is back on its usual 4th of July weekend schedule with its latest animated release, Monsters and Minions. Let's check out that trailer.
Oh. You see those large, heavily armed men? They suspect you have killed their leader, and they want you dead.
Quick?
Okay, action!
Buddy?
We're just actors. That was perfect. You wrote a monster movie?
Si, con pica kaiju. Arr, arr.
What are you going to use for your monster?
Monsters and Minions is quite different from the previous two movies because it's essentially a standalone prequel that has no connections to Despicable Me. It follows two very specific minions, Henry and James, as they try to make their way in Hollywood during the early days of cinema. Kids and some adults will come for the Minions, and adult cinephiles will love the setting and the throwback references to cinema of yore, including monster movies. The movie is co-written and directed by Pierre Coffin, who also provides all the voices of the Minions, but the movie also features voices provided by Oscar winners Allison Janney, Christoph Waltz, and Jeff Bridges, as well as Oscar nominee Jesse Eisenberg and Zoe Deutsch, who are reunited from Zombieland Double Tap. There's also Bobby Moynihan, who just provided a voice for Hoppers, as well as Trey Parker voicing a character named Gumi. The first Minions movie spun directly off from the two previous Despicable Me blockbusters. It opened on July 10th, 2015, with 115.7 million in its opening 3 days, capitalizing on the popularity of the characters from those earlier movies. The Minions became even more iconic after that first spin-off movie, and Minions ended up making 336 million domestic and $821.2 million overseas for a worldwide total of $1.1 billion, which is more than both previous Despicable Me blockbusters. 2 years later, Despicable Me 3 capitalized on the love of the Minions, and that too grossed over $1 billion worldwide. It would then be 5 years until the sequel, Minions: The Rise of Gru, which opened over the 4th of July weekend in 2022, with $107 million over the 3-day weekend, with July 1st falling on the Friday with previews the day before. 2 years later, Despicable Me 4 opened on July 3rd, which was a Wednesday, made $47 million in those 2 days, and it made another $75 million over the 3 days after the 4th. That's $122.6 million in its first 5 days. Whenever I talk about the box office for 4th of July, I try to study past 4th of Julys to see how movies behaved when the 4th fell on different days of the week. The last time the 4th fell on a Saturday was 2020 during the pandemic, so there's no real comparisons there. Last time before that was all the way back in 2009 when Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen took on Ice Age: Dawn of the Dinosaurs, both blockbuster sequels. Ice Age opened on Wednesday with $13.8 million and ended up making $66.7 million in its first 5 days, $41.7 million over the 3-day weekend. At the time, that was generally a lower grossing animated franchise than Despicable Me or the Minions. Because many people might be off work earlier this Friday, that might be the chosen day to go see Minions and Monsters with the whole family, since there are often other activities to do on the 4th, especially this year. Minions and Monsters has 2 extra days ahead of the 4th of July weekend, and though there are no Tuesday previews, there are sneak previews on Monday night that'll be added into Wednesday. I'm recording this on Monday before reviews hit, though I expect it to be generally be positive and better than the first Minions, which ended up with 55% on Rotten Tomatoes and a really bad audience score. Minions and Monsters might end up closer to Minions: The Rise of Gru, which got a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. Minions have become such an important and integral part of Illumination and Universal's animation initiative. Their characters recognized the world over, and they've even become a regular part of Illumination's opening logo that was included in front of the Super Mario Galaxy earlier this year. That movie was a huge blockbuster hit, brought in lots of kids and families who might be even more excited for Minions and Monsters. I think Minions and Monsters could end up with 30 to 40 million in its first 2 days, and then another 72 to 80 million over the weekend. Ultimately, that would be a smaller 5-day opening than Despicable Me 4 2 years ago, but it's a great start to another movie in the franchise that could end up with close to 300 million domestic. I do expect there will be a lot of repeat watching of this one. Angel Studios is taking a massive gamble with its historic biopic, Young Washington, that takes a look at one particular battle faced by Washington during his early days as a soldier. I probably won't have much to say about this beyond my review, but check out the trailer anyway.
Why can I not become a British officer?
Because you are not British, George.
There must be a path.
There is not for you.
Go dig my grave. Both wide and deep.
I sense a storm looming over the Ohio territories.
I could go there, survey it for you.
So you have ambition.
Since the Crown sent me to serve, I've yet to have a good experience with a colonist.
I look forward to changing your opinion.
John Irwin, the filmmaker behind massive faith-based dramas, changes gears to make a historical drama that's well in tune with America's 250th birthday this weekend. It stars William Franklin Miller. No, I haven't heard of him either, playing the title character, and you can see him behind me. Right there. I don't know why I put him directly behind me, but the movie also includes appearances by actors like Sir Ben Kingsley, Kelsey Grammer, Mary Louise Parker, and Andy Serkis, who just released his Animal Farm animated movie through Angel Studios. But that bombed very badly. On the other hand, John Irwin has a great track record with massive hits, particularly as part of the Irwin brothers, like I Can Only Imagine for Lionsgate, as well as his follow-up, I Still Believe, and other faith-based films like American Underdog, The Jesus Music, and Jesus Revolution. I Can Only Imagine was a massive hit in 2018, opening with $17.1 million on its way to $83.5 million in North America on just a $7 million budget. Irwin was not involved with the sequel, I Can Only Imagine 2, that only opened with $7.8 million and grossed $18.6 million domestic. The problem is that movie had a production budget of $18 million, so it was a massive loss. Irwin's last theatrical release was Jesus Revolution for Lionsgate, which had a strong $16 million opening on its way to $52 million domestic, and that was based on a $50 million budget. That did much better than the Jesus Music, which didn't even get a wide release. The sports biopic, American Underdog, the Kurt Warner story, starring Zachary Levi, also wasn't a huge hit, opening with less than $6 million on Christmas weekend and making $26.5 million domestic. In many ways, it feels like Angel Studios is relying on Irwin's name as a filmmaker among faith-based audiences to sell Young Washington, since he's made enough reliable movies that did well at the box office. Even if a movie with big battle sequences seems like a bit of a reach for him. In many ways, Young Washington reminds me of Mel Gibson's The Patriot, directed by Roland Emmerich, which opened the weekend before the 4th of July in 2000, 26 years ago, with a solid 22.4 million. That was at a time when Gibson was still at the height of his celebrity, while Emmerich was coming off the massive hit Independence Day, ironically, and his poorly received attempt at Godzilla. For Gibson, that movie was just 5 years after he won Oscars for his hit historical epic Braveheart. Still, it ended up grossing 113 million domestically, although those were different times, and its biggest competition at the time was George Clooney's The Perfect Storm, which opened even bigger with 41.3 million and ended up grossing 182.6 million in North America. Young Washington doesn't have nearly the star power of The Patriot, so it's again relying on Irwin and the film's title character, which will make it easier to mark the movie as a 4th of July release. Oddly, we've already had a biopic this year about one of our nation's founding fathers. This is The Great Awakening about Benjamin Franklin, which came from Roadside Attractions, which has been another big player in the faith-based drama realm. That opened with 2 million over Easter weekend and ended up with 8.1 million domestic. That does not bode well for Young Washington. I do have a feeling it'll do better, mainly because it's easier to market a John Irwin movie to Angel Studios Christian audiences, even if it's not really a faith-based movie. I personally have seen absolutely zero marketing myself, so I have no idea what Angel Studios is doing, but I can still see this opening with 8 to 10 million this weekend, because unlike A Great Awakening, they're smart enough to put Washington in the title while people are thinking about the birth of our country. That's it for this week. Happy Independence Day and happy 250th birthday to America. I'll be back next week with a look at new movies, including Disney's Moana and Warner Brothers' Evil Dead Burn, as well as a few others.
I wish I was someone better. I wish